So this all boils down into basically 3 points. The first one being that I don't think it's the price increase that's actually as bad as the sheer number of figures. Point number 2, based on inflation, the price of $24.99 is actually probably close to what it should have been even in 2015. And the third point, and I think this is the one that's hitting the hardest, is that so I've been seeing people complain for a little while now about the price increases in the Marvel Legends figures. And I wanted to take a deeper dive into that and try to figure out if the price increases are justified or not. And so I wanted to do this using real data, hard numbers. So with that in mind, I've taken a bunch of data from actionfigure411.com and I've compiled it into a spreadsheet, and then I added a bunch of color and some graphs, and we're going to go over all of that, and hopefully I'll be able to paint a picture of why we have the price increases. And I want to preface all this by saying that I don't necessarily think that the cost of the figures are worth the price, but really this video is about showing you the data and the trends and why the prices have increased. So Hasbro took over the Marvel license from Toy Biz, and in 2006 they released their first wave. Since then they've released over 80 BAF waves, 14 sets, 83 exclusives, 15 deluxe figures, and 83 multi-packs. So this totals over 1,000 figures over 17 years. Keep in mind that we're only talking about the Marvel Legends line. Hasbro, they make all kinds of other toys as well. So most notably would be Transformers is also one of their oldest properties that they have, as well as Power Rangers, Star Wars, and G.I. Joe 2. So this is mainly going to focus on the Marvel Legends side of things, but that doesn't mean that this doesn't also apply to the other lines. So since Toy Biz's first BAF wave, each wave has been priced at $19.99, all the way back from 2005 up until about 2021. So for really 15 years, the price stayed the same. If we look at an inflation calculator, we can see that the price of $19.99 in 2015 is actually $24.99 in 2022 dollars. So why didn't they raise the prices sooner or more gradually? Let's look at the data. So like I said, I've taken all of the data from actionfigure411.com and compiled it into this spreadsheet. So we see in 2005 we have 3 waves, in 2006 we have 5, and then 4, and then 3, and then just 1 wave in 2009. If we keep going up, we'll see that the numbers, they start back up in 2012 and pick up in 2013, 14, 15. You can see, so 6 waves, 8 waves, 12 waves, small drop to 10, and then 2020 obviously was, you know, the pandemic, so they dropped a lot and then picked back up quite a bit in 2021, and now of course we're in 2022. So looking at the sets, so a set is a wave that doesn't have a BAF for it. Hasbro took over in 2006, and then nothing up until 2013 and 2017. So with the exclusive figures, 2007 we had some, 2008, and then nothing until 2011, and then a few more years up until 2015, and they started releasing more. And what's really crazy to me is the sheer number in 2020. 24 exclusive figures in just 2021. And yes, there is the Sentinel HasLab figure in there, but even if you subtract that, that's still 23, which is a far cry from everything before that. And then in the deluxe tab, we have not a lot. This started in 2020. The idea behind the deluxe figures is that these were intended to be figures that were going to be a little bit bigger, or figures that came with a lot more accessories. But then in 2022, you can see that their base pricing seems to have gone up by $1.50. So it's $31.49 instead of the $29.99 price. And finally, we're at the multi-packs. And so these are going to be for 2 or more figures. We can see started in 2007 and only missed 1 year of figures in 2011 for multi-packs. And now we're going to look at the total figures released by year. So I have this broken down starting from 2006, because again, that's when Hasbro took over the license and released their first wave. And you can see that in 2006 we have 18, and then 2007 has 70, and then 2008 is when it declines pretty rapidly. And most likely that's going to be because of the Great Recession. That's not entirely surprising to see that huge drop. And you can even see that reflected in the graphs as well, right? You can see how everything just drops dramatically. But then you can see that it starts picking back up. So in 2012, we have 24, and then 33, 42, so on and so forth. And I suspect that's likely due to several factors, just being that, companies are finally pulling out of the reception, as well as the popularity of the Marvel movies themselves. So the Avengers came out in 2012, and from there, they just released one after another in terms of movie. And so I think that's a big part of why the push for even more figures happened. And so if you go up, you can see how it just increases so much, right? By 2017, we have 97 figures released. And then by 2018, it's 146. We do see a slight drop in 2019, and I am not 100% sure why that may be, but then it picks back up in 2020 and in 2021. It's crazy. It's a lot of figures. So with the steep ramp up of total figures, you can see that it's just a lot. It's a huge number of figures. I think that's part of what's feeling like things are costing too much, is that problem of there just being so many figures to purchase, right? So in 2021, we saw how prices really started going up. The prices jumped around in 2021 for the BAF wave specifically, and that's a little weird because you would expect the price to just kind of ramp up. But then if you look at our 2022 pricing, it starts at $22.99, with the exception of the Armadillo Spider-Man No Way Home wave, but that one's on the tail end of 2021, which is why I think it's still priced at $19.99. Otherwise, everything else is $22 or $24.99. So at this point, most waves going forward are likely going to be priced at $22 to $24.99 per figure. But is that a fair price? I have this chart as well, and so I took these percentages from just an inflation calculator website, and I'll leave that linked below if you want to look at that yourself. And so we can see that since 2006 all the way up until 2020, everything was priced at $19.99. So what does that pricing look like in 2022 dollars? In 2006, that would be $27.61. All the way up until 2015, where we see $24.99, which is again the pricing that it is starting to be today. So I mean, we're looking at 15 some odd years of the same pricing, which means that they didn't really keep up with inflation. At the same time, I would say that they most likely didn't increase their pricing because of the way timing worked out, right? With the Great Recession happening in 2008, and then again, the pandemic in 2020 happened. And so now that I think things have stabilized, that's when they're starting to bring up those prices to go along with inflation. With that said, there's one more thing that I do want to point out, which are the multi-packs, and specifically Spider-Man multi-packs. So let's look at 2022. What's kind of really pushing it to me are these $55.99 costs. So we see that with the Spinneret and Spider-Man, Silk and Dr. Octopus, Peter Parker and Ned Leeds. And at that pricing, that's valued at a $27.99 figure. And what are the comparable figures? So if we look at the exclusives, and we're seeing a similar thing with the Iron Spider, Japanese Spider-Man, Future Foundation Spider-Man, and the Amazing Fantasy Spider-Man, all priced at $27.99. That's a tough price. I think that Hasbro is pricing those that way because they know Spider-Man sells well. Because if we look at Zemo, $22.99, even Doctor Strange was $26.49, Jigsaw $23, Sentry $24, Winter Soldier. So everything else was not $27.99. It's all the Spider-Man ones. And I think that's a similar look with the multi-pack. Of the non-Spider-Man multi-packs, Excalibur multi-pack is $62.99. That's 3 figures, putting it at $20.99 per figure. Captain America 2-pack, It's $41.99, right? That's way less than the $55.99 that Hasbro's asking for the other figures. And so I know that the Spider-Man No Way Home 3-pack has been in a lot of contention as well, because at $89.99, that's $29.99 per figure, which is a lot. I mean, that's Hasbro saying that we believe that these are 3 deluxe figures in this multi-pack, and I think a lot of people will disagree with that. With that said, I think that we are paying a premium for Spider-Man figures. So this all boils down into basically 3 points. The first one being that I don't think it's the price increase that's actually as bad as the sheer number of figures. Because at this point, in 2020, we had 145 figures, and in 2021, it's 150 figures. Point number 2, based on inflation, the price of $24.99 is actually probably close to what it should have been even in 2015. And the third point, and I think this is the one that's hitting the hardest, is that there appears to be a Spider-Man premium. And if you look at all of the figures announced and released in the last year or so that are Spider-Man related, almost all of them are priced higher than the other typical Marvel Legends figures. Hasbro knows Spider-Man is a huge seller for them, and they're going to continue pricing it that way until people stop paying those prices. And so that's the Spider-Man premium that, you know, Hasbro is going to charge us. And you know, like I said, a lot of people aren't so happy about that pricing, especially with the No Way Home 3-pack. And a lot of people have even said that they're not going to buy that 3-pack, and then instead they're going to wait for the solo release of the Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire figures. But I don't think they're going to make that. And if you want to hear more on my thoughts about that, then check out this video here.